What I would like to ask is a question. We know that in many parts of the world, some of the many successes in recent years have been through the legal system. So the US Supreme Court just declared that discrimination in employment against LGBT plus people is illegal. India, the courts there declared the ban on same-sex relations to be unlawful. I was just wondering if you could perhaps explain to us what are the avenues and options, the likelihood of any successful legal challenge, because technically under the Polish constitution and indeed under various treaties that Poland has signed, this anti-LGBT crusade is unlawful. So can you give us a take on that?
Well, we are not lawyers, so we are not able to answer your question precisely. But what has been happening in Poland in the last 5 years under the Law and Justice government is then that the government managed to consolidate the legal powers under its power. It means that they basically undermined the rules of independent Supreme Court and Constitutional Court. They managed to remove all the independent judges and oppositional judges and put into the court, the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, their own judges and their own politicians. So this is the problem, that they have overtaken the Polish legal system.
I mean, I am aware of the way in which the judicial system has been nobbled by the ruling party and that many independent judges have been purged. But I'm wondering whether, even despite that, the mere fact of bringing a legal case on constitutional grounds or on treaty grounds, on the grounds of treaties that Poland has signed, whether politically and I suppose ideologically, that would have an impact even if it didn't succeed. I mean, obviously it would be best not to go via the European Union because that's the big bogeyman. It'd be best to fight the case based on Poland's own constitution. That would be the strongest line of legal attack. And as I said, even if the judges ruled against the claim, the fact that you've done it will raise public awareness and provoke a debate, which will hopefully give yourselves and lawyers a platform to make the case that you want to make. Is that viable?
Yes, yes, it's very important.
Because we have an article in the Polish constitution which prohibits discrimination on any grounds. I mean,
yes.
this is the legal phrasing, that discrimination is prohibited on any grounds. So there is no specification, because in some legal documents you have specification, you have age, ethnicity, class, you have sexual orientation, but not in the Polish constitution. The discrimination is prohibited on any grounds. But of course, as we mentioned before, the Polish government is not respecting the constitution. They use only these elements of the constitution which are useful for them, for their political agenda, and ignore those elements of the constitution who counter their agenda.
But has there been any attempt to fight a constitutional case to challenge the government? Has any group tried to actually bring a constitutional challenge?
I mean, not as one big legal suit. No, there are constant, again, we are not lawyers, and probably lawyers would be better to answer your question, but there is a constant struggle going on in Poland in the sphere of law. Because you have lawyers who defend the constitution, you have lawyers who are very active against the current government, and the current government fighting with their lawyers, the oppositional lawyers. So there is a legal war happening in Poland on many grounds, and it is very visible and is well covered by the free media. So there is a visibility of opposition against the government on the cultural ground, on the street level through massive demonstration, but also on legal level. And this is all very well publicized in the Polish media and international media. Poland is not Russia. We still have a lot of freedom when it comes to oppositional voices and oppositional activities.
But thank you for your suggestion. It's very important. It's vital. Maybe we should start it.
I think it would you must obviously make the decision. You know better than me, but just from a distance, you know, looking at the successes that legal challenges have secured around the world, even when they don't initially succeed, the fact that they're raised generates a public debate, and through that public debate, you create awareness. You conscientize people. You get a platform to discuss the issues. So I would have thought that for example, the ban on any recognition for same-sex partnerships could be challenged constitutionally in the Polish courts on the grounds of non-discrimination.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe it also could be challenged culturally. You mentioned earlier about a Polish sensibility which is very much geared to families and generations. And it seems to me that actually same-sex partnerships are looking for something similar, are looking for making family structures. It could actually connect culturally.
Yes, and
what
we've
you
had
say.
an excellent visibility campaign of lesbian and gay couples who held hands on the billboards. We were part of this campaign. It was very successful and raised awareness. You are right. Angus's exhibition looks like a Polish exhibition because we always have art and activism together. So culturally, we've been opposing the government a lot, yes.
Could I ask another question? Do you think there would be any value in a targeted campaign of boycott, sanctions, and disinvestment targeted at the Polish ruling party and its leaders? Do you think that might be a factor? Like, for example, an assets freeze, travel bans, things like that, which could be introduced by individual or collective EU governments?
Well, it already happened in Britain. A couple of Polish politicians were not allowed to enter Britain because of their racist opinions. Mm-hmm. So it already happened. So and yes, of course, it is very important because the government is afraid of two things. They are afraid of the massive demonstrations that are happening on Polish streets, and they are afraid of negative publicity abroad.
Can I ask you, do Polish leaders or those involved in the ruling party have particular financial interests that could be targeted, like particular companies or firms, particular investments?
We don't know. We can't answer these questions.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
What do you suspect, Peter?
Well, I've read quite a number of reports that some of the leading party officials and government officials have quite extensive business interests. And maybe those business interests, if true, could be targeted. That would hit them in the pocket.
Yes, this would work definitely, but we don't know about this.
Is there any chance you could perhaps find out?
The leading newspaper, Gazeta Wyborcza, is all the time investigating the cases of corruption, and there are many now during the pandemic. Jarosław Kaczyński, the twin brother, who is in charge of the party, he has financial interest in some
international corporations, but we don't remember it.
And also during the pandemic, the Ministry of Health bought respirators which never arrived, and they are bought from a Pakistani middleman. So there are many cases like that, yes.
So the government is very shady on the financial side as well.
But what impresses me is how you feel that activism can go straight for the jugular, and that we need to see the big move, whether that's a challenge to the government on constitutional grounds or a campaign to hurt people in their foreign financial interests, things that we can do collectively from this country. And that's a shake to my thinking. You make me think like I'm just got a kind of rather small horizons compared to that, where you could really hurt a government. And so I'm impressed by that way of thinking that's very decisive and big scale. And I wondered if you could give us an example in this issue of how that kind of strategy has worked that you've been involved in?
Well, a good example would be the Stop Murder Music campaign, pioneered and organized by Outrage about 10 to 20 years ago. This was in response to an appeal from the Jamaican LGBT plus group, JFLAG, that groups around the world did something to call out 8 Jamaican reggae and dancehall singers that were putting out tracks to actually incite the murder of LGBT plus people. And this was happening with total impunity. JFLAG itself was very limited in its resources and connections, and was very fearful of the consequences if it took the lead. So an appeal was sent out. Outrage was the only group anywhere in the world to respond, and we said, yes, we will do it. So we did it at their behest. We set up a global movement to target those singers. The first step was to ask them to cease and desist their incitements to murder. When that didn't work, we began a campaign of organizing the cancellations of their concerts. So we targeted venues initially in Britain, but then we set up a global network where their concerts were targeted in Germany, France, the United States, Denmark, and so on. We got dozens of their concerts cancelled. It cost millions of dollars in lost earnings, and very quickly they came to the negotiating table. So there's an example of how an international campaign would work. I think what's needed here is a similar sort of, if you like, global coordinating body or group of people, or even just one person for that matter, who can set out the agenda of what needs to be done and then feed that out to groups all over the world where they can do local actions in their own city, in their own country. That's the way we did it with Stop Murder Music. We had a coordinating center, which I basically organized, which sent out information, the details about what these singers actually said, copies of their lyrics, audio of their songs. So people were armed with the evidence, they had the facts, they had the information, and then they were able to take that to concert promoters, venue owners, and so on, to get the concerts cancelled. So I would say that's the way, that's the kind of model that's probably needed. I don't know who would do that. I mean, I'm just completely overwhelmed. I'm just like, I'm barely eating or sleeping. I'm so busy. So I couldn't take it on myself, but I'd be obviously willing to help, give support and help publicize. And of course, what we also did was make sure that what we were doing was very well publicized. So we sent it out to the LGBT plus press and the mainstream press all over the world and got a huge amount of media coverage, which was very, very embarrassing to these singers. In the same way as you mentioned earlier, that we need to try and embarrass the Polish leaders behind these policies. They are sensitive to international opinion and to bad publicity.
Yes, that's very, very new for me and extremely important. I think that's the avenue that we should take. We should collaborate and continue develop our struggle here, which is rather limited, into a global one. That's very important.
But I would like to say that what we really need as a starting point is a series of clear, concrete, specific demands, calling out, listing maybe the half a dozen crimes of the Polish regime, what they're doing, why it's wrong, so that gives people a series of issues and a series of demands that they can use in campaigns, whether it be letter writing or pickets outside the Polish embassy. So I'd ask you to perhaps think about what those key demands would be, and then perhaps communicate them to us.
I would like to add that people speak a lot about same-sex partnership and this kind of legal changes, but right now in Poland, what we need most, and also from the international pressure, is to speak about the hate speech in Poland. because we are dealing here with cases of hate speech. All of it is just a case of one big case of the governmental hate speech. So some kind of introduction or campaigning for law that prohibits hate speech directed at sexual minorities would be of the most important would be the most important in Poland right now.
Agreed. And to pursue that campaign, we of course would need the evidence of who said what and when and where. So if you can provide Angus with that information, then we can start compiling it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, my apologies that I have to go, but it's been great speaking to you all, and much admiration. You are heroes. You're battling under conditions of far greater adversity than we have in Britain or other Western countries. So my heartfelt salutations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.